Hello and welcome all the Web3 enthusiasts. It's Max speaking, and we continue Synopsis talks, bringing to you guys interesting projects to get to know more about them. And I'm very excited every time when it comes to discussing some bridges between the crypto and Web3 world and the real traditional variants of business. So today is one of such discussions, and I'm excited to host this interview with Vishal Shah, founder of StaynEarn project. And before we begin, the most important question, as usually, Vishal, how are you today?
I'm very well. Hope you're well too.
Yeah, I see you in a good mood, and I believe today's discussion will be extremely positive and hopefully insightful. So I have a bunch of questions prepared to you, and let's start moving one by one. We'll begin with the general questions about how actually the thing started, and then dive more into detailed information about StaynEarn. So let's get the things going. And the first question, very general one. Please introduce StaynEarn to our audience. Tell us about your history, maybe your goals and philosophy of your project.
Yeah, well, thank you for the intro and the welcome there. So, Stay and Earn was something that was born out of whiteboarding for a number of times for quite a long time. An idea for a real Web3 solution, right? Now, as much as we want to jump from Web2 to Web3, we realized maybe the opportunity set was somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. And when it came to RWA plays, right, we looked at various things and we said, well, look, a lot of this is about fractionalization. It's about securitization. These are plays that necessarily may not work right away, at least without the right operating rails and in compliant manners. So is there something else that we can do, right? And one of the key things that we kind of came to an idea was that if we were to kind of do a Web 2.5 play, where the agenda was to democratize margin, where the idea was to disintermediate highly profitable businesses in a compliant way, where you create more equitable stakeholdership, that would kind of probably achieve a good segue or at least start the on-ramping of Web 2 to Web 3, right, into this world. And then that had a lot of things that needed to happen as a result. You need abstraction so that people don't feel different, they don't feel intimidated. How many people really still use a wallet in this world to kind of connect to things? And the business case needed to make sense, right? So we looked at a lot of different businesses, and when we said, okay, what's a tech vertical? So we know tech. What that is a good business vertical. So tech and making money. Cash on cash, hand over fist, right? There aren't many, but the most obvious one was the Airbnb model, right? And you can extrapolate this into a lot of other services now as well. But the point is that there's a double charge to a guest and a host, and there's a lot of meat in between. And you'll see the numbers. You just look at the filings and such. But anecdotally, everybody's paid for it, right? We've all paid very, very high fees at times to kind of stay at vacation rental properties, and it's become the norm. And we wanted to question that norm. And so that's where StaynEarn was born, with the idea that we're going to take this model and we're going to disintermediate it.
Well, thank you. Pretty much details, and you mentioned several things we'd like to discuss further. And yeah, seems like questioning the norms is a great way to start something new. So, okay, you mentioned Web 0.5, and let's speak a bit about this concept. So normally Web3 folks try to distance themselves from legacy industries. How did you actually come up with this concept of Web 0.5? Could you tell more about this?
Well, we just noticed a lot of friction points, right? So, it's easy when we start thinking about Web3 and we say, okay, how does this product work, right? Like, I mean, look, we have some, we know other players in Web3 industry and such that will simply just be like, oh yeah, you just plug in your wallet, you do this, you move that. And well, you've already lost a lot of the Web2 audience when you start with that, right? Web2 doesn't, if you're a Web2 user, whether you embrace crypto or not necessarily, at times it may be that you're so templated to use a certain process, right? It's easier to tap your phone to pay through Apple Pay. It's easier to just put in your credit card details because there's accountability and the refund process, right? That you can probably trust or there's somebody to hold accountable for. These things are still ideals that people hold on to, right? So
Yeah.
it's not, you don't want to ostracize that. You want to say, okay, well, look, you're in a world where that's the norm. We get it. And we're telling you to go into a world where you need to connect your wallet and you might not even know what a private key is, right? And eventually you'll get there. But how do we on-ramp you in a way where you can kind of feel a little bit more comfortable, where there is abstraction, such that the blockchain element, the token element, everything that is happening is kind of in the background. And for that, you need somebody in the middle to kind of intermediate that, right? To facilitate that. And that's where what we do, right? As a Web 2.5 model, we have a matching engine, a booking engine, a customer support service, a division dealing with, fund flow and such, and making sure that, we have the compliance mechanism, the parameters in which we operate with. These all things are necessary, right? And at the end of the day, biggest achievement here, outside the economics where everybody, becomes a bit more equitable, is that, we're getting exposure to the people that need the exposure, right? So as somebody who's, been in this space for, about 8 years now, the idea is that, you're coming into, you're sending an invitation out to people. I say, look, this is not scary. This is normal. This is easy to use. This is how it happens. And here are real tangible benefits by doing something that's not very different to what you're already doing. And those things, I think, is what, Web 2.5 is kind of conceptualized for.
Well, thank you. Pretty much detailed again, and I think I would like to put a hashtag of Web 2.5 to this video preview. Okay, let's move on, and starting from today, actually, and moving on, we'd like to add a little bit more personal questions to our speakers, so for our audience, not just to get details of only their projects, but to know more about our guests and your background. So if you don't mind, the next few questions will be about your way in Web3. And actually, the first one is a bigger dive into history than the previous one. It's about how you started in Web3. How did you enter and how the industry is different right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, if we say look, we could separate crypto from Web3, I think, right? So I think, when the DeFi waves initially started, say, 19 and 20, I was still a little bit, I was slightly skeptical, for right or, wrong. We built centralized stuff. We hadn't built decentralized stuff at scale at the time. But as we got to see more of it, we got to see, we recognized very quickly that, people have an identity for this. There are people who naturally embrace this, right? And they will flock to it, which was quite interesting. Also, as external factors kind of compounded and then they continue to do so and they evolve in a way which suggests that, you do want to be eventually in a situation where you are self-sovereign, as it comes to wealth and various things, and also trust, that there is a inevitable evolution that way, right? And it became apparent, and it continues to become more apparent every day. So we started off by simply saying, okay, what can be done in Web3? And my most difficult hurdle always was that it's not simply about taking always, templating a Web2 business and making it Web3, right? And I thought that, you could, but then you always kind of miss the operating rails, because it needs to be fundamentally different. And then I think, this is how memes, came out, because they're completely different, right? There's no rhyme or reason. There is no real analog. I would say, if anything, the meme world probably drove a lot of the, the stock market moves that were a little bit more nonsensical. So the tail will wag the dog, if you will, right? So it needs to be a bit more of a unique development within Web3 itself, I think, for it to be sustainable and long term, and make sense. So that was kind of our foray into kind of thinking about various things. We thought about RWA very heavily. RWA naturally makes sense, but again, the models need to be rethought. When we think about various things such as fractionalization and stuff, we got very bored. It was no different than just buying stock or buying a part of something that you could already do. If anything, you had this added obligation to now trade on what we called ATSs, and you need to be licensed, and there's a whole there's a whole host of things that needed to happen to kind of enable you to actually make those transactions to realize that value, which at the end of the day then made you question, well, was that all worth it in the end? Like, is this scalable from a UX perspective, right? So Web3 has all been for us a bit more about experimenting and kind of thinking about things and applying our skill sets to things that we know we are good at. We know real world businesses. We're thinking about which ones can be adapted to this eventual path, but in a way that is in a way that has a little bit of handholding done and is also scalable.
Well, thanks. It's always very interesting to know the experience of people who have been skeptical to this industry and who are maybe it's still something kind of experiment, or it's maybe your main direction now, but still you're on board, and it's very interesting and insightful to know someone's way, especially when it comes to founders and builders in this industry. Well, and another thing which is also always very interesting to know, and I think we'll be coming up with this question like on a regular basis in our upcoming episodes. So could you share your worst experience you've ever came across in Web3? So maybe something that made you change your mind in some way, or made you understand that these things should be changed, something like this.
Well, look, well, there's various ways to kind of answer this, right? And that there's various things that just went through my head as I was kind of thinking about it. But I would say that, if you haven't been rugged, you've not really been in Web3 yet. Rugged once on some scale, hopefully not a very large scale. But there's this whole idea that needs to be trustless, needs to be put in, everything that you could, you make code is law for all things possible, but that is good so long as the code is strong enough. And then when that gets exploited, or somebody has a inside advantage, and somebody uses that advantage to kind of kill everybody else, and we see it happen time and again, right? So it is a bit of a minefield, right? So the worst experience is that of being rugged, and then the fear of rug, because of the way that this is designed. I don't think more than 3 or 4 days goes by until we hear of something that is a bit of a known quantity having some sort of exploit or some sort of rug. These things will improve over time. They'll change over time. Probably needs more robust production methodologies to make sure that we don't kind of expose and take things that aren't quite ready straight out to market, but or place that kind of trust in them, at least from the outset. But I think that's probably been the worst experience. And then I'm sure there's a whole host of other things that that are down that pecking order, like you didn't properly store your private keys, or you did something silly with that, right? And then you got where are you going? There's no customer support to call to say, hey, my money's stuck somewhere. That's not going to really happen, right? You accidentally send money somewhere else, right? These things happen, right? So it brings accountability back to the human, which is quite nice in that sense, but also we are prone to error. So it's not bulletproof yet.
So if you've never been rugged, you've never been to Web3, like this. Very, very wise idea. Well, yeah, I think that these fears and still it's all about the human nature, and fears are something which follows us every day. But I think like with bridging this gap between the traditional Web 2 and Web 3, be it Web 2.5, I think we will move these things to a better direction. Okay, so that was a pretty interesting excursion to your past, and now let's talk about your present and a little bit about the future, and actually move closer to StaynEarn. So could you please tell us how actually StaynEarn works for hosts and guests? How is paying for stays with R3B beneficial for guests?
Yeah. So For the for the Web3 audience, I mean, the best way to summarize it is kind of like a BNB model, right? And what this simply means is that, for anybody, well, for everybody really, is that when a host and a guest come to the platform, so we are a marketplace or an exchange, or what we would normally call OTA in this space. And what happens is that a guest and a host usually pay both a fee to the marketplace for a transaction to happen. Now, let's take the example of Airbnb. Imagine you're a host with no other complications. Typically, the lowest fee you'll pay is 3% for your property on whatever the booking amount is, and a guest will probably pay about 15%, okay, more or less, the roundabout number. So let's say there's $1,000 booking. There's a
Okay.
$1,000 booking. The guest is paying $1,150 and the host is getting $970, right? That $180 is more or less taken by Airbnb for whatever purposes it has, its business purposes, et cetera. But as you can see, they have a very high net margin. So, that does hit the bottom line quite a bit. So in our instance, what we do is we basically say to hosts that, hey, we're actually not going to charge you the 3% fee so long as you hold enough of this token. What's this token? Don't worry about it. It's already in your account. Okay. Account? What account? No, it's on your dashboard. Okay. You don't have to worry about the wallet. You don't have to worry about anything. It's all linked. Okay. So it's beautiful. You got a little system and you see it and it's there. And for now, don't worry about it. You're not going to pay anything. Okay. As the platform grows tremendously, not right away, you will need to own a little bit more. But by that point, you will actually see what benefits have been accrued to you, right? As a result of saving that fee over and over and over again. Now, when a guest goes ahead and makes a booking, they basically pay that $1,150. We are taking that $150 because the host gets their full booking amount, and we take a portion of that $150 and we buy the rev token in the market. We buy it and we distribute it to all stakeholders. All stakeholders means the host whose property it was for booking, the guest that made the booking, anybody else that is live on the platform. And there's a key, I like to think about it this way, right? I like to think about extremes. That imagine you came to this platform once, right, as a guest, your first time, whatever it was, and you went through these motions, and then you made a booking, and say at the end of the day you received I don't know, 10 rev token, which are worth $10, right, $1 a piece or whatever it was. So you have $10 worth of rev token in your account. Now imagine, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. Imagine you've done this on a different website where you simply just got, say 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever, cash back, right? Like $50, $100, whatever, right? And you got $50 cash back for doing that on Airbnb. I don't know, there's some promo, right? You come back 5 years later, you log into your account, there's $50 sitting in there, right? It's dollar cash value. Nothing else happens. In our particular instance, coming back to that 10 rev, right? You get the 10 rev worth $10 today. Now, ceteris paribus, sans any speculation or anything, whatever it is, if more people are coming to our platform, StaynEarn is obliged to go to the market to buy this token and distribute, buy and distribute, buy and distribute, buy and distribute, right? So naturally, that means that as the platform grows, the amount that StaynEarn is obligated to buy grows, the amount that's being distributed grows. So if you come back in that, similar scenario 5 years later, instead of 10 rev at $1 a piece, you may have 100 rev at $8 a piece. The point is you're participating in the growth of the platform, right? That's effectively what we've done by creating a token unit economy. And this is a key point, because one of the key things about Web3 or about many crypto projects is, do you need a token? And the answer is no for the vast majority of them, right? But if you're talking about democratizing, if you're talking about creating equitable stakeholdership, if you're talking about distribution and making, and creating a growth that is more inclusive for all stakeholders, then a unit token is absolutely necessary. It's actually a great way to distribute all these sort of things, right? And to create that economy. So in that sense, that is the flow, and at the core of it, and that is the key thesis, that you are participating in something that is growing, and that's the biggest difference. That is the key difference. Yeah.
This sounds like some explanation for first question about philosophy and goals, and sounds like an interesting way for talking distribution, and sounds also like a pretty fair reward giving for the contribution to the growing platform. Well, I'm really excited and looking forward to see how the things will actually go. And for sure, I will make my contribution to this as my capabilities let me do it. Well, and let's move on. And you mentioned also several times already Airbnb. So let's talk about who are your competitive, sorry, what are your competitive advantages actually compared to Airbnb, maybe to Booking.com and other Web2 booking platforms?
Our biggest incentive for people to engage with us versus, so Booking.com and Expedia are what we call aggregators, right? And Vrbo is an OTA just like Airbnb, although they're more or less all in bed except for Airbnb, right? They're standalone. Everybody else is part of the same group roughly. And so our biggest advantage is economics, right? This is a dirty high margin business. And that's why it's naturally appealing to disintermediate, right? Like everybody charges fees. Like I'll give you an idea, right? When Airbnb originally started, it was all about the individual host. You would go and you would go ahead and make a book. You'd create a property. Someone would come make a booking. It's kind of okay, and then they became their own payment services provider. So they'd be able to distribute, and it was fine, right? What happened though is that as the number of hosts grew exponentially, just as the guest state, a lot of people just ended up buying rental properties, and people made it a side income, right? So somebody now owns 5 properties, and they said, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, how are you managing this? Well, up until about like 12 years ago, it was Excel, right? Okay, I'm managing my Excel. Okay, this is quite cool. Okay, it's getting a little complicated, a little bit of heavy. To kind of manage, given I'm on 4 different sites, how do I avoid double bookings? How do I change prices dynamically? How do I do all these sort of things? And enter the property management industry, right? And basically people started saying, look, we'll charge you 10%, we'll charge you 15%, or we'll charge you 20% sometimes, but we'll give you a piece of software, or no, actually, you know what? You just give it to us. We'll manage it ourselves, right? Because we're good at this, and this is our day job, and this is your side job. But we'll give you 80% anyways of whatever it is. So whatever, you don't have to worry about it, right? Okay, fine, we'll do that. And the property managers originally had like 10, 15, 20, 25 properties, and they're like, okay, this is heavy, but we've got hands, we can manage this. This is quite cool. We've got some ad hoc software. But this isn't going to scale, right? And so the PMS industry took off, which is the property management software industry. A lot of bespoke tooling came out from dynamic pricing, double blocking calendars, and all these kind of things, right? Which is, it's algebra at the end of the day, but it was needed, right? And it was a missing component. And then they said, okay, we'll charge you a subscription fee for using our software. And the property manager's like, okay, that's fine. Now it's still connected to all these places individually. How do I connect everything together? And they're like, there are external, what we call channel managers, right? So all these websites are what we call channels, and they kind of get, you have to kind of navigate between them, and you want to do it through a single piece of software as a property manager to make it okay for yourself. But to get exposure, to use that service, there's another fee involved. So could you imagine as an end user, right? Imagine an individual host, right? You've given your property to a property manager who is now already charging you a fee. The property manager is paying the PMS service likely for a fee, for a subscription model, or for something else, or for a revenue base, or whatever it is. And then on top of that, it is possible that you have a lot of add-on services, such as channel management, that is being paid for. And then at the end of the day, when the property is actually getting booked, there may be a fee from the marketplace itself. Well, it may be all these things are getting embedded, right? So somebody's eating the cost somewhere, right? The point is there's too many recycled costs and fees happening everywhere. And so this is something that needs to completely it needs to be revamped in a way where there is a vertical integration up and downstream, right? And some people are starting to do this, which is quite interesting. But the point is that a challenger is with the right solution is well positioned to disrupt this industry, just like banking was, but with all the nimble banks and the digital banks and stuff, and even the card issuers. This is an industry that is kind of evergreen in terms of travel and booking and all that sort of stuff. And at the same time, it's slightly price inelastic in that people will pay for their holidays and such. But at the same time, people are always looking for the best possible way to execute. And so as a challenger, that kind of puts you in a good position where you're not bricks and mortar heavy. You're a tech first solution. You're distributing better economics out of the gates, right? Then you become an option, right? So one of the key things for StaynEarn is that we are going to, it's going to be about, hey, how are people going to notice you? Who's going to notice you? Well, we're going to be a channel in those PMSs and those channel managers, just like all those other big guys are, right? Like we will be right alongside them. So if somebody's using that property management software, they can broadcast to us. Like it's very easy. It's very much in their daily motions and nothing extraneous is required. So then it just becomes about the strong incentive models. And so we, we've geared ourselves in a way where we can stay nimble enough to make these pivots, integrate the way we need to, but at the same time, benefit materially from the fact that we simply just don't need a whole lot of margin to survive, because on a dollar basis, it's still quite high, and we don't have 50,000 staff to support.
Wow, that was huge, but still, everything seems to be on its place now and seems to be pretty clear. Thank you. That's a good skill to be explaining things like this. Yeah, and let's continue a little bit more about your competitors. Maybe you don't actually think of them in this way. So we mentioned a few other Web2 booking platforms, aggregators. So could you tell us who are your major competitors, if you even consider someone such? And what market share do you plan to win over the coming maybe 1 from 2, 3 years?
Well, let's put it this way. We're out there to kind of, compete with Airbnb. Let's start with that, right? There's a Goliath in the room. When Verbo did it, they did it to kind of do the same thing, just take a little bit of the market. And when we're talking about, a 11-figure company, you don't need to eat a lot of market share to attract tremendous valuation. Full stop. And so that is our number one target, because we are a marketplace. And we do the exact same thing as they do, right? We will be going downstream and offering other services, ancillary services as well, whether it's airport pickups, whether it's experiences while you're doing all these sort of things, but all redeemable. Again, in the rewards that you've been given out, right? We which have a non-fixed dollar value at any given point in time. And so that's the way we see it. In the Web3 space, I don't think we have many competitors. We've looked at a few other models out there. They're a little bit different. The utilities aren't necessarily always clear, or they're too Web3, to the point where it probably ostracizes the Web2 audience. Look, we sit in a spot, right, where we're simply saying we want to get Web2 to Web3, right? And we're going to help onboard. Like that's the holy grail, right? If you can crack that, that's where you win, right? So to silo ourselves to say, hey, these are competitors here, these are competitors here. No, we're doing something much bigger than that, right? We're going, the vision here is to bring in an audience that is otherwise unaffiliated. Yeah, I think that cracks the code.
Well, okay, get it. And I like your approach you just shared. So let's move on to like from the past and present and a little bit of future. Let's move on to some announcements. And could you tell us uh, your latest news and what are the exciting things to look forward to?
Yeah, so we've got a few cool things happening. So let's talk about, where's the product, right? Because I think unfortunately a lot of projects, especially in crypto, product is a secondary thought. We're product first. We're about, let's say, 90% done now on the build itself for the tech. The integrations are starting with the key partners that we need. We have our licensing. Here we're a legal-led process. We haven't done our own issuance of the token itself. It's all through a compliant, structure. The operating rails are there. We're working through regulated PSP. We are, we've kind of, connected into various channels that we need to enable this sort of stuff. So that's been quite key. And it's a bit of a moat. There is no, at times, as much as you want to jump 2 feet in, you kind of have to make sure that you have, some ability to swim. right? And so in this particular case, that was our number, that's what we wanted to make sure. We know how to swim in these waters. And so we did whatever we needed to make sure that, we could get to that state. So with regards to, what's coming up now is as once these integrations finish, the product launch is scheduled for somewhere between Q4 and Q1. It'll take a little bit of testing. It's fine, normal process to just make sure everything is kind of working as intended. It is a heavy tech stack, and it can be, and you could think of the number of iterations that could possibly come up. So we're working on that. The issuer has indicated that there's going to be a TGE in the coming months. Before product launch, and it needs to exist prior to it because on day one, if we have a booking, we have token to buy, and so we need to make sure that that is able to happen. So we're excited. Look, we're heads down right now. Every single day is just more and more just pushing forward with various things and new features and new ideas and ways of kind of navigating the space. It's extremely fragmented at the moment, right? But it's a good way of consolidating interest. I think one key thing I did want to kind of touch on, right, that I haven't yet, which is very important. So because we take these key principles and we hold them dear to all our decision-making processes. I think it's good. It's a good framework, right? Is that a lot of Web3 projects, let's say not Web3 projects, let's a lot of crypto projects, right? The project is misaligned with its end users, investors, or whatever you want to call them, right? Why? Because their income stream is really non-existent outside of their balance sheet. And so until they dollarize their balance sheet, at the cost of those people that are probably, backing them, they aren't really realizing sustainability. Whereas in our particular case, we're taking our revenue and contributing to actually purchasing this token, right? We are dollar revenue positive by design as we grow. We're not needing to kind of, dollarize revenue from owning any particular token. So that's quite important. So we're always aligned with all of our stakeholders. So it's stuff like this that we kind of, just make sure that these are guiding principles as we kind of develop our partnerships, as we develop our tech, as we develop our business strategies, and as we scale, right? I mean, by Q1 we will be live, ceteris paribus in the UAE. We're licensed in Dubai, and geographical expansion is a part of the is a part of the plan, and we have key markets identified, and that corporate rollout is kind of already in discussion. And so this is all about blitzscaling. You don't go slow on stuff like this. You try to the extent possible to go as fast as possible. So that's where we are. Love to keep you updated with anything and everything that kind of comes our way, and keep the community engaged.
Well, a lot of big things are coming, and this is the kind of the answer to the question regarding news and announcements I'd like to hear every time when I ask this question actually to our guests. So thank you very much, pretty insightful. Now we're at the final and traditional questions from our Synopsis team, which is actually, could you share some advice to our audience? Like, let me a little bit specify. So you are an expert in the Web3. You've been a skeptic. Now you are a founder in this field. So could you share some piece of advice with our viewers who are maybe skeptic of getting on board on Web3, what to start with and how to make the most benefit of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not sure I'm the best, I'm the right person for advice per se, but look, I would say the following, right? In my learning, it has been that you keep an open mind. The world is evolving. It's evolving very quickly. The being adaptable is obviously very key. There's enough people now engaging with crypto to suggest that the cat's out of the bag. It has staying power. This is not something that kind of disappears anymore, right? I think that's probably a well accepted idea. If that is the case, you have to think about where does it head next, right? The deep value, the opportunities are never found in something that is your friend's friend is going to tell you about, right? Or that you've seen on the headlines already. It's always going to be a function of your own research and a function of your own discretion, right? That, hey, this makes sense. I haven't seen this. This is quite cool. This could be game changing, right? And making sure there's no redundancy factors so that your own, use your own evaluation network, right? Because I think far too many times in this space, we see people, FOMOing on, other no narratives, and that doesn't get you anywhere. And you end up being, you end up getting the short straw of things. So I would suggest just the individuality in that framework and in adjudicating. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but just know that the value lies in something that hasn't been proven probably by virtue of that fact.
Well, thank you. Pretty interesting thing, guys. Stay open-minded and remember about measuring the risks. If you've never been wrecked, you've never been to Web3. A good one, I like it from today. And actually, yeah, we came up with all the questions prepared for today. Thank you very much, Vishal, for joining in. It was very insightful, very confident, and very interesting. We'll be for surely tracking your success of StaynEarn, and we'll be happy to see you in more episodes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for our audience for watching us till the end. Guys, stay tuned, take care, and stay open-minded. See you in the next episodes. Bye-bye to everyone.